There's nothing like rivalry week in college football. Our friends at J&J Apparel have released two awesome designs for two of the best rivalry matchups in the South. The Egg Bowl 2025 shirt features a hand-drawn design of the Golden Egg Trophy, available in colors for both Rebels and Bulldog fans. And of course, there's the Iron Bowl 2025 design for our Alabama and Auburn fans. Both shirts are available for a limited time only, so run on over to J&J Apparel's site and get it while you still can. The pre-sale ends December the 1st. Don't miss out. Shop at jnjapparel.net. Once again, that is jnjapparel.net for the Egg Bowl 2025 shirt and the Iron Bowl 2025 shirt, available through J&J Apparel. Boy, did we save the best one for last. The Iron Bowl rivalry never disappoints, and on this edition of the Stingray Show, we're going to be breaking down the Iron Bowl preview for 2025. Now, for the past 17 years, dating back to 1989 at Jordan Hare Stadium, the rivalry between Alabama and Auburn holds a slight lead, 10-7 over Alabama. However, the last two meetings have been won by the Crimson Tide of Alabama down at Auburn. The last home win for Auburn in the series was back pre-COVID in 2019. Alabama needs this win to become a playoff team and to make it to the SEC championship game, and Auburn needs this win to become bowl eligible. Kyle Rush of the barnauburn.com is on deck to join me, and then later on we will be joined by Clint Lamb from the Crimson Tide side to talk about Roll Tide versus War Eagle on the Iron Bowl preview show right here on the Stingray Show.
Hi, this is Tim Brando with a reminder. Look out, you're about to feel the buzz of Stingray.
This is Stephen Ray, a.k.a. Stingray, coming to you live from Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
I'm Heath Hopkins. I'm here in DeSoto County, Mississippi, right outside of Memphis, Tennessee. You know, Mark, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you feel that responsibility to pay it forward and give some kid a chance coming up in the ranks, kind of like Tony did for you?
Why do you think I'm talking to Stingray tonight?
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
No.
Hey, Stingray, here's the deal. When you get involved with Texas, it's like getting married to a stripper. and let me explain this. It looks good. It's kind of sexy on the surface. Yeah. But then you get the baggage, you get the drama, you get all that eventually comes with it. And that's what you get with Texas, and that's what the Big 12 learned.
And Heath, any thoughts on our show moving forward?
Hey, with the Stingray Show, if you don't like it, you better learn to love it, because it's the best show going today, baby. Woo!
And with that, I want to welcome you inside the Iron Bowl preview show on the eve of Thanksgiving. Hope everybody is doing well. And let me just go ahead and set the scene for you guys down in Auburn. This weekend, Auburn is trying to get bowl eligible with its sixth win. And if they are able to knock off Alabama Saturday night, Alabama will finish the year again, the regular season like last year at 9-3, miss the SEC championship game and the playoffs. So Auburn can definitely play spoiler, and I will also remind you of this: Alabama has not been as crisp on offense the last 3 weeks, and that of course was against South Carolina, LSU, and Oklahoma, as all three teams got into the backfield and sacked Ty Simpson multiple times, and the inability for Alabama to run the football consistently is coming back to bite them. To break this game down From the Auburn side, here is Kyle Rush of the barnauburn.com. Kyle, how are things with you in Auburn, Alabama?
Man, it's good. It's good. We're ready for all the fans to get here. We're ready to get the turkey and the dressing over with, and we're ready to play this one. Auburn, I think, coming in this thing feeling more hope than they would have maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's crazy how not even a coaching change, a firing can light a fire under this team. You've kind of found yourself on offense and ready to see if you can go put it to the maximum test is with the SEC against the SEC's best defense.
Now, if you would, straight off the top, what is the latest that you can tell us about the coaching search down at Auburn?
Yeah, it's crazy, man. All signs seem to point to John Summerall, and you could have an announcement maybe as soon as Sunday. But it's strange because Ole Miss has almost the exact same confidence. So the last time that happened, Auburn ended up without Lane Kiffin. So it feels like it's going that way. Everybody I've talked to feels like it's going that way. I've had recruits that are committed to Auburn tell me that it's going to be John Summerall. I feel like there's an announcement planned already for John Summerall on Sunday. So it feels like it's going that way. We'll just have to see what happens. Lane Kiffin could throw a wrench in everything in a couple of days too. So, but currently that's the direction it feels.
Kyle, if you would, talk about the offensive explosion that Auburn has seen since the firing of Hugh Freeze, because they put up unbelievable numbers against Vanderbilt and then, of course, last week against Mercer. Talk about the offense, please.
It's crazy, man. In 2 games, you've scored, I think, over 90 points on offense. A couple of defensive touchdowns thrown in there as well. And then you can find no other 2 games throughout the season that you can add them up and to come up with anything like that. One of them being an SEC opponent on the road who's got a pretty solid defense. And then obviously you have your FCS school who you did what you're supposed to do. You handled business and got it done. And, a lot of people will probably think with Derek Nix coming in, it has to be a completely different offense. It has to be, maybe it's Lane Kiffin's. Maybe he spent a lot of time with Lane Kiffin. Maybe he's running a Lane Kiffin version of that offense. But I talked with Bo Wallace, who is a former Hugh Freeze quarterback, and he said, no, that's Hugh Freeze's offense. What you've seen, that is a vintage Hugh Freeze offense you've seen the last 2 weeks, spreading them out. When you're having offensive line issues, you don't bring everybody in tight and run, max protection. You spread them out and you go a tempo and you get the ball out. And that's what they did. Auburn against Vanderbilt had the fastest time to snap than the average team that had like the quickest average for the whole season. So they were faster than even the fastest team in the country that game. That is what Hugh Freeze, that's what his offense does. And it feels like Derek Nix is sort of taking that and running it the way it's supposed to be run. And there's one voice, one person calling the plays, which I really downplayed earlier in the year. And it seems like it was a bigger deal than I ever really expected. So I think you look at that and you say, hey, you stuck with it. You got a quarterback. You stuck with him. You run. Well, I say you stuck with him. You did go with Deuce against the Mercer game, but you had one voice, one plan, and you got the ball to your playmakers, and you've seen the results. It's kind of crazy.
So, Kyle, let's go in and talk about the opponent briefly. Alabama has not been crisp the last 3 FBS games. Now, last week, they played a Eastern Illinois team. Of course, that was an FCS program. But the South Carolina game, the LSU game, and the Oklahoma game, Alabama's offensive line cannot protect Ty Simpson, and they are not accurately and consistently running the football. Talk about what you've seen and the regression of the Alabama offense the last 3 weeks.
Yeah, but on the flip side, you got to look, and SC's got one of the more elite defensive lines as far as getting to the quarterback in the conference. LSU's a really good defense, and then I have so much respect for Brent Venables and Oklahoma's defense. So, yeah, they're not quite putting up the numbers, but they also play 3 really, really stout three really, really stout defenses. Look, no, they're not having the most success running the ball, but I don't know that necessarily matters with the way this offense works, because they get the ball out quick, they get the ball out in space, and those plays sort of become an extension of the run. So where they lack in carries of turn around and hand it to the running back, they can make it up and, hey, let's get a quick one out to Ryan Williams or Jeremy Bernard, or get a quick one to the tight end into the flat. I think I looked at it and it's like 23%, which is almost 1 in 4 of their pass attempts or pass completions go to a running back or a tight end. So they know how to, really spread you out and make it tough on you. So if they can get into those third and manageable situations, they can just have those demoralizing, third down conversions that kind of keep the chains going. I don't think they really care if they're not a high flying, explosive, score from 70 yards offense. They can do that. I think they'd rather just, hey, let's protect the ball and just, wear you out, even if it's not on the run, not in the running game. If it's just dink and dunk passing, and then we'll turn around and we'll hit Jeremy over the middle for 15 or 20 yards. They're just really, to me, I know this sounds crazy when I say they're balanced, because you typically view that in 50% pass, 50% run. I just think they're balanced in that they can really beat you in a lot of different ways.
Right.
They don't necessarily have to focus on one thing. They can adapt, and that to me has been the most impressive thing. Now, I love Auburn's faster linebackers in this scenario. If you're going to keep the ball, if you're not going to push the ball down the field, that's been Auburn's biggest weakness. And coincidentally, that at times seems like it's Alabama's biggest weakness, really being able to push it vertical. So if they're really trying to keep everything, 10 yards and in, I really like Auburn. I really like that matchup for Auburn.
Let's start right there and continue with that. Talk about Auburn's defense that we've seen this season. They are really good on that side of the ball, going up against Alabama's offense, please.
Yeah. So as you had the offensive renaissance, you had a defensive setback, and that was the only thing that could happen. Like, Auburn's offense couldn't get worse. So you knew more than likely if they could change a few things, you could get maybe have some production. But taking DJ Durkin out of that captain's chair of the defensive coordinator and having to govern the whole team, like, until he got his feet under him, you knew the defense was going to take a step back, and you saw that against Vanderbilt. And then you started to see that, at the very beginning of the Mercer game, and then all of a sudden they just decided, hey, we're not playing to our standard. We're going to get this thing turned around. And then they completely shut out Mercer for the whole rest of the game after that first quarter. So going into this game, it's just like anything. When you have more time and more experience in that particular setup, it's much easier to go out there and execute. You kind of got your plan together. You got your hierarchy together. You got your management crew together, and you can kind of focus on dialing up that defense and dialing up the plays that you need. I think it comes at a really good time for Auburn to be able to get back to playing that nasty defense they were playing the whole season up until the firing of Hugh Freeze. I think they'll be really close you'll see a lot closer product to that defense than you have maybe the Vanderbilt defense.
All right, let's flip it. Alabama's defense going up against what they're calling the brand new up-tempo and very, very fast Auburn offense. Talk about that matchup.
They're obviously very athletic up front. They're a very athletic defensive line that they can really affect quarterbacks. Maybe just as good as I've seen Alabama do in quite some time. And they just don't make a ton of mistakes. I mean, they're not the number one scoring defense and number one total defense in the conference for no reason. They may be number one or number two in scoring defense. Doesn't matter. They're really good. So it's going to take Auburn, and like you kind of teased it right there. I think the way Auburn can combat that is if they're really good at affecting the quarterback, you just have to get the ball out before they can affect the quarterback. So it's gonna take that idea of maybe even going into some empty sets or 2x2 or 4 wide receiver sets and going with a little bit of tempo so that Alabama can't dial up and Kane Womack can't dial up those exotic simulated pressures and blitz packages that they have, and you just kind of get them in a lot of base calls and then just go keep the chains moving. To me, that's the biggest thing. Winning on first down is going to be critical because Auburn's cannot get into a third and obvious passing situation. That's just going to be Alabama's just going to be licking their chops. So winning on first down and keeping that defensive line off balance, I think, is going to be the key for this Auburn offense to have success against Alabama.
And we saw very first game of the year, and I know that was back in September, but Castellanos at Florida State gave Alabama absolute fits. Could we see them try to replicate that with Deuce on Saturday?
I don't expect to see much of Deuce, if any. I think it's going to be Ashton, and I think they're okay with that. Now, I'm okay if Alabama is thinking they need to prepare for Deuce because that just means it's that much more time that they're not preparing for Ashton. But Ashton can do everything that Deuce can do. Ashton is a great runner as well. He's a fantastic runner. He's got good speed. He's bigger, stronger. He can move the pile. So if it gets into those third and short situations, like you could call Ashton's number and be just fine. It's the last game of the year. So even if you were to get injured, then obviously you could go to Deuce there, but I think you'd roll with Ashton, man. And like you said, they struggled with Florida State. I'm not really sure if there's another comparable quarterback to Ashton Daniels that they've really faced. Maybe John Mateer. They're similar. He's obviously a much better passer, and then Ashton's probably a better runner. So Castellanos is probably a really good comparison, and they did struggle. I'm sure they fixed those leaks, so to speak, but it's still going to be, I think it's going to be Ashton's show. And there are some advantages there, even traditionally with Alabama struggling with running quarterbacks.
So Kyle, if Auburn is going to pull the monumental upset on Saturday night and keep Alabama out of the SEC championship and out of the playoffs, give us a couple of X factors on offense and over on defense, please.
Well, I'll start with defense. The X factor is his name starts with an X, and that's Xavier Atkins. X marks the spot. He is going to be called upon. When I just talked about that passing game, that's the extension of the running game. That's going to be his job. His job a lot of times is to spy running quarterbacks. You don't necessarily have that threat so much with Ty Simpson. Now it's going to be, hey, I've got to follow those backs out of the backfield. I got to make sure that we don't give up the easy yardage to the tight ends. He's got the speed to do it. He leads the SEC in tackles for loss. X factor is going to be X, Xavier Atkins on defense. And then on offense, it's got to be Cam Coleman. He can score on anybody. He can catch on anybody. His highlight, his touchdown compilation is just incredible. I think you got to lean on it's really an X factor from the wide receiver spots, probably two. Probably got to lean on him and Eric Singleton. Both of those guys had 10 receptions against Vanderbilt, and you saw the offense just explode. I think you got to get those guys the ball, man. You got to get those guys the ball early and get it to them often, whether that be short passes over the middle, whether that be get the ball to them vertically. Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton on offense, and for sure Xavier Atkins on defense.
All right, Kyle, I know that you were on a time crunch. Briefly, give us a prediction. Who wins Saturday night? Does Alabama clinch a spot in the SEC championship game and the playoffs, or are they denied for a second straight year with a final regular season record of 9-3?
I think it's going to be a classic, and I think it's going to be the first one to 30 wins. Okay. And I'm going to say it's going to be 31-28, Auburn kicking a field goal at the end, writing the end of the story for Alex McPherson and everything that he's been through. So that's where I'm going with. I think it's a race to 30, and I say Auburn wins 31-28.
Kyle, as always, I will leave you with this. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours.
You too,
Good
man.
luck this weekend for you and Auburn War Eagle, and we would love to catch up with you later on, my friend.
Sounds good. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you.
All right.
All right, so for all of the Auburn people, really do want to thank Kyle Rush of the barnauburn.com for joining me, and that is going to put a wrap on the Auburn side of this matchup. As soon as I run these commercials, we will turn to the Alabama side of this matchup of the Iron Bowl 2025 right after this. There's nothing like rivalry week in college football. Our friends at J&J Apparel have released 2 awesome designs for 2 of the best rivalry matchups in the South. The Egg Bowl 2025 shirt features a hand-drawn design of the Golden Egg Trophy, available in colors for both Rebels and Bulldog fans. And of course, there's the Iron Bowl 2025 design for our Alabama and Auburn fans. Both shirts are available for a limited time only, so run on over to J&J Apparel's site and get it while you still can. The pre-sale ends December the 1st. Don't miss out. Shop at jnjapparel.net. Once again, that is jnjapparel.net for the Egg Bowl 2025 shirt and the Iron Bowl 2025 shirt, available through J&J Apparel. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Ferguson of South's Finest Meats, the official sponsor of the Stingray Show, has a message for you.
Everything we do here is fresh and custom made, custom to order. I tell people when they come in, if you don't see what you like, ask somebody. We've got the capability to process it, make it. If you want a different blend of hamburger meat, we'll do you a brisket blend. We'll do you a chuck blend. We'll do you a sirloin blend. We do all that right here. We are a butcher shop. That's what we do. So please don't be afraid to ask if you don't see what you like. We can make you any size patty you want. We can make you any amount you want. People call me and say, well, how many patties come in the box? Well, how many would you like in a box? You want 12, we'll put 12. You want 25, we'll put 25.
That's just one of the many things that South's Finest Meats has to offer, the official butcher shop of the Stingray Show. For over 100 years, the Bank of Moundville has been a name clients can trust. The Bank of Moundville is more than just a bank. They're your neighbors, your friends, and your community partners. Their unique approach to financial education has always centered around families. They believe that financially strong homes today lay the foundation for a brighter futures for tomorrow's generation. You can call them today at 205-371-2227. Once again, that is 371-2227 to schedule an appointment to build your financial security. The Bank of Moundville is a member FDIC and an equal housing lender. All right, it is time to switch gears and talk about the Alabama Crimson Tide, who last year were knocked out of the playoffs by the Oklahoma Sooners and finished the regular season with a record of 9-3. And if they lose to Auburn, they will finish again at 9-3 on this season. To talk about the Crimson Tide of Alabama, who have won 2 in a row over Auburn at Auburn, dating back to 2019. Here is Clint Lamb. Clint, how are things with you as we sit here getting ready for the Iron Bowl preview?
I'm doing fantastic today, man. I think it's going to be a good game, a fun game. Obviously, this is what you live for as far as rivalry week, and just I'm ready for Saturday. I'll put it that way.
Hey, it's kind of hard to hear you just a little bit. You're kind of low.
Hey, can you hear me now?
It's still pretty low. Clint, you with me?
Yeah, let me hop out and I'll try to get back in with you, brother.
Okay, no problem. Technology, guys, you gotta love it. So, guys, we will check and see. Hopefully, his audio will work. And while that's working, I'm going to run another ad from one of our wonderful advertisers, and we will be right back. We all enjoy the changing of the seasons. Fall is a special time to be thankful for our families and many blessings. It is also a great time, though, to review your insurance coverages. Alpha Insurance and hometown agent Jeff Nee can help you personalize your insurance needs. The more you protect, the more you save. With helpful customer service teams right here to serve you in Alabama and over in Mississippi, you can count on Alpha to provide the insurance plan that provides the protection that you need. For all your auto, home, life, and business insurance needs, call Alpha agent Jeff Nee or drop by his office at 202 McFarland Boulevard East, Suite 101 in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. And remember, with Jeff Nee, the more you protect, the more you save. So, guys, I do want to thank all of our wonderful advertisers that do stay with us here on the Stingray Show throughout, and a little bit of history about the Iron Bowl. It is one of a rivalry that dates back all the way to 1893, and this rivalry was paused for several decades before being renewed back in 1948. And some of the notable facts and some of the notable games about this rivalry include Punt, Bama Punt, the game back in 1972, and a significant comeback by Auburn in 2010, which ultimately pushed Auburn into the national championship game. Everybody remembers that game because of Cam Newton. And these teams played first in Birmingham in 1893, but the series was stopped in 1907 and did not resume again until 1948. The name the Iron Bowl was coined by Ralph Shug Jordan in the early 1950s, a reference to the game being played in Birmingham and Birmingham's industrial history. And for many years, as everybody always knows, this game was played in Birmingham when tickets were split evenly between the two schools. Auburn moved the game to its home stadium permanently in 1989, and that, of course, was the first time that Auburn had beaten Alabama there in Auburn. If you guys will remember, in 1972 Bama Punt, the underdog Tigers won in a famous upset of the Alabama Crimson Tide, and the largest comeback in the series was when Auburn came back from a 24-point deficit in Tuscaloosa to win 28-27 against the Alabama Crimson Tide, and that game, of course, was led by Cam Newton and the Auburn Tigers. So let's go on ahead now and see if we can't get the audio better from Clint Lamb, who is going to cover this game from the Alabama Crimson Tide. Clint, do you have us now? Clint, you there? Apparently not. You have got to love technology. Let me text him because we're having some audio issues on his end. Clint, make sure that you are not muted. I tell you guys, you gotta love technology, and it is so frustrating sometimes. Let me see. Clint, you with us? Okay, give him a second and let him try to figure it out. All right, so that's what we're going to do. All right, so let's continue to talk about this rivalry. And like everybody has talked about, the Iron Bowl is, like I said, one of the most intimidating, intense, nasty, bitter rivalries in all of college football. And everybody will know that because of what happened, because of the aftermath of the 2010 football game. We're not even going to discuss that because that was a nasty, nasty side of the rivalry that nobody wants to go through. However, the Iron Bowl, once again, as you look back at this series, and I was looking at this earlier today, since 1989, like I talked about, that was the first time that this game was played in Auburn. The Auburn Tigers at home in the Jordan Hare Stadium won the first four meetings after it was moved to Jordan Hare Stadium. Then Alabama won two in a row, and then Auburn won three in a row. Alabama won two, and then Auburn and Alabama alternated, and then Alabama and Auburn have split the last two, with Alabama winning in 2021 and then, of course, in 2023. And if you guys will remember, the 2023 game was the one that ripped Hugh Freeze's heart out, and everybody with the grave digger play. Clint, you with us?
Can you hear me now, brother?
Yes, sir. Hey, thank you for joining us. And Clint is with Cover Crimson, who covers the Crimson Tide of Alabama. And Clint, when you look at this matchup, talk about the ins and outs of Alabama going into this matchup, please.
Well, I do think there's some pressure involved. Obviously, missing the college football playoff last year was the first time that it was a 12-team playoff. Right. Alabama had been to all but two playoffs under Nick Saban when it was a 14 playoff, and you miss it. So now, kind of going through this process now, the fact that this game, really it all comes down to this game. Now, granted, there will be a conversation that maybe needs to be had next week if Alabama wins, makes it to the SEC championship. Maybe there's no guarantee that Alabama will be in if they lose the SEC championship, but 100% you are out if you lose this football game. And just, having that type of pressure, I guess, on this game is really making it interesting because Auburn's really tough defensively. I think offensively, they've really started to figure some things out under Derek Nix, but Alabama still, they've got a lot of talent, a lot of ability. Obviously, the offense as of late has kind of fallen short of expectations, and really some of the areas they were winning earlier in the season, maybe they haven't done it to the same extent. But this is overall still a very good, very effective football team, very good on defense. So it's going to be a battle. I can't wait to watch it. It certainly is going to be what we all hope is a classic Iron Bowl.
So I do have to ask you, it was reported earlier last week that there were hints of Kalen DeBoer and Penn State opening. Give us your thoughts and the latest update that you know about with Kalen DeBoer and his interest of Penn State.
Well, I know coming from the Kalen DeBoer side, it is that he's focused on Alabama. He loves it at Alabama. And so I don't know that he's granted, that we've remember, Nick Saban was never going to be the head football coach at Alabama. And then next thing you know, he's the head football coach. So I'm not saying that kind of stuff never happens, but I know that DeBoer, he wanted this type of challenge. He wanted to replace Nick Saban. He embraced the pressure of that. So, I mean, him being willing to bail 2 years in, I don't necessarily know that that's going to be the case, but you never know. I mean, if they lose to Auburn, then, I mean, maybe that conversation starts to happen, and it's more so from the Alabama side, even though I don't necessarily think that'll be the case either. So it's the wild, wild west right now. The transfer portal has turned everything upside down. NIL. You've got coaches that are potentially going to be coaching in the college football playoffs, like Lane Kiffin, courting other teams and potentially going to leave and not even coach his team if they make it to the playoffs. So to say that it 100% won't happen, I think that would be a little naive and a little premature. But what I will say is that Kalen DeBoer is, at least coming from his side of things, he's 100% focused on Alabama, and they feel like they got a real shot this weekend and a real shot to make some noise if they can make it to the SEC championship and possibly the college football playoff.
Now, I do want to ask you, going back to the last 3 SEC games, the offensive line, they have been, for Alabama, a big drop-off with players and, I guess you would say, defenses being able to get pressure on Ty Simpson and sacking him. What do you ultimately attribute the lack of, I guess you would say, the lack of control for the offensive line the last 3 games of the FBS opponents?
I think the offensive line has kind of been up and down all season. It certainly has been a problem at times the last few games.
Yes.
I think it's a combination of factors. Sometimes it's just the quarterback. There are opportunities there. He's got to get the football out, and he doesn't do it. Sometimes it's, their inability to sustain blocks, whether it be run blocking. I think that's been a massive problem in the run game, but also in pass protection. You've seen some breakdowns, some lack of communication. Like you've got the slide protection against Oklahoma moving one way, and you've got a blitzing off-ball linebacker coming in the opposite A-gap with no running back ready to step up and get him blocked. And then when there was a running back there on 2 different occasions, the running backs allowed sacks. So I think it's a combination of factors. I think at times Alabama has done well up front, especially in pass protection, but the run blocking to me has been the biggest inconsistency. And I think that's led to a lot of unfavorable situations, the 3rd and longs, the 2nd longs, where the opposing defense knows you're probably going to be throwing the football, especially with Alabama's tendencies. Right. And that's allowed some opposing pass rushers to kind of tee off on that offensive line. It's Caden Proctor's 355 pounds. I mean, he's not built to, handle the edge speed when that edge speed is able to pin its ears back and it knows that you're pass blocking. That's not how he wins. He wins as a guy who kind of moves people off the football, puts the offense in favorable situations, and then you don't know whether they're running or throwing. That is where that type of offensive lineman is at its best. And so Alabama putting itself in unfavorable situations for one reason or another, like the lack of run blocking, whether it be Ty Simpson taking an unnecessary sack, the running backs not keeping things as clean as they need to, or maybe not seeing the hole like they need to. It's been a combination of factors, but it certainly has affected the offense as a whole. And as the season has wore on, this idea of, okay, Alabama should be able to run the football. They should be able to throw the ball vertically. And, Ty Simpson is a fantastic intermediate to short thrower. The run game hadn't been where it needed to be. The vertical passing game hadn't been on display at all. And so defenses have kind of been able to hone in on that intermediate to short passing game. And that's made Ty Simpson's life all the more difficult. So they've got to be able to get some of these other things fixed if they want to, get back to what they were doing in the short to intermediate passing game early in the season.
So when you look at the matchup with Auburn, what concerns you the most about the Auburn game, and especially with it being played at Jordan Hare Stadium?
Well, a lot of Alabama fans will probably tell you that the Voodoo Stadium, it did. I mean, which is, I guess, if you've seen enough crazy things happen in that place, to an extent, I understand buying into it. But at the same time, I think on the field, when you look at the X's and O's, I think it is Auburn's defensive front. I think they have been, a guy like Keldrick Falk, his ability to stop the run, got tremendous upside as a pass rusher, can certainly apply pressure on the quarterback. But then, Crawford on the other side, fantastic guy at that buck position. Xavier Adkins being an off-ball blitzer or a guy that you can line up on the edge of the line of scrimmage, allow him to get up to the quarterback. Like, they got some dudes in their front seven. I think they're a little bit vulnerable in the secondary, and I think they can kind of be had in some areas in the secondary, but up front, they are fantastic. And the biggest concern is like the Keldrick Falk type of player, with the fact that you're talking about trying to win the C-gap battle with, and a lot of times that's your tight ends. I mean, it is your tight ends. And Josh Cuevas isn't going to be available. At least we don't think that he's going to be available. Now, that could change, but as of right now, I'd be shocked if he was. Danny Lewis was supposed to be that in blocking tight end. He has, played a little bit this year, but he's been banged up for the entirety of the season, and we really haven't seen him as of late. That was supposed to be that guy that can handle those battles, and so you're relying on a true freshman in Caleb Edwards, another redshirt freshman in Jay Lindsey. Maybe you see some Marshall Pritchett. Maybe you see some Brody Dalton. But just those tight ends right now, they got to show that they can go out there and get guys like Keldrick Falk blocked consistently, and that's a tall task. I mean, he's a potential top 10, top 5 draft pick in next year's draft. Like I said, got a lot of raw ability, so that would be the biggest concern for me. But I also think I think Ashton Daniels looked phenomenal against Vanderbilt. I wouldn't be shocked at all if you saw some Deuce Knight at quarterback as well. Maybe you see, some packages. I don't really know that for sure. We'll have to wait and see. But I think that Alabama's pass rush, the way it's really steadily improved, I think they can put Auburn in some uncomfortable positions as well. So while I do think ultimately it could end up being a little bit more high scoring than some think, I also think in a lot of ways it's going to be a defensive battle, and really which defense kind of puts the opposing offense in as many unfavorable, uncomfortable situations as possible. That's what I think probably will ultimately determine the game.
So where do you feel like that Alabama can take advantage of Auburn?
The secondary, I think Alabama, despite the fact that they're, Ty Simpson's been off a little bit in recent weeks. Don't get me wrong. Some of the routine things that he was making look easy earlier in the season, it hadn't been there for him. I think mechanically he's been a little bit off. But I also think that, in the turnovers, you can't get the strip sacks, the fumbles, whatever you want to call them, the interceptions. I think over his last 6 quarters, he's had 4 turnovers. That's never great. That's never what you want to see. One of those was understandable, late half, throwing it up there, trying to let your guy have a chance to get it, and the defensive back makes a good play. But, I do think that Ty Simpson is still one of the premier quarterbacks in college football. I still think he's extremely dangerous. I think Alabama's receivers, extremely dangerous. Now, Auburn's got some dudes at wide receiver as well. I mean, they're deep, and they got, they've done a great job of highlighting guys like Cam Coleman and Eric Singleton since, Hugh Freeze got fired. I love what they're doing with those guys. But I think Alabama's secondary against their receivers is a little bit better of a matchup for Alabama than Auburn's secondary going against Alabama's receivers. But the offensive line has got to keep that pass rush at bay. You got to stay on schedule and allow that play action to be a lot more effective. Make Auburn respect your run game, or respect your ability to at least attempt to run the football. If they can do that, then I think they can have some success. But, as I've said, Auburn also presents a lot of challenges too.
So, if Alabama is going to go into Auburn and take care of business, give us a couple of X factors for Alabama, a couple on offense and a couple on defense, please.
Interesting question. Obviously, the easy one's Ty, because he's just had to carry so much so far this season. And to expect that to be any different, I don't think that's the correct route to go. But I will say that I feel like offensively, I could probably go with one of the tight ends and how they hold up against those edge rushers, but I think I'm probably going to go with Daniel Hill. I like how they've started to commit to him. Now, granted, this is assuming good health, because against Eastern Illinois, he only had 2 carries. I think he averaged 7 yards a carry. Actually, I think he had 7 yards on both runs. And, he's kind of been their hammer down there on the goal line. I thought he did some really good things. Not granted, he had the 28-yard run against Oklahoma's defensive front. It's a really good rushing defense. But outside of that, he had some other good runs as well. Wasn't as consistent as you would like, but I think having that type of player that can consistently avoid the negative yardage situations, keep the offense on schedule a little bit, maybe some 2nd 6s, maybe some 2nd 7s, where it's either probably throwing the football, but there's no guarantee. Like, I could certainly see him having a massive impact in this game. Defensively, I think a guy like Yanze Pierre is going to be absolutely huge. He's been one of Alabama's best defensive players. And in fact, some would argue he's probably been Alabama's best defensive player, which I think is a surprise to many. But if you can keep Auburn in some of those unfavorable situations as well, he's been able to apply pressure on the quarterback. Auburn's got a good offensive line as far as the run blocking and displacing defensive linemen, but in pass protection, I think they're pretty vulnerable. So you've got to get them in those obvious passing situations, and you have to be weary of, Ashton Daniels' legs. I mean, he's got mobility, so you can't be reckless with your pass rush, but I do think they can do some things to kind of make him uncomfortable, and I think Yanze Pierre would be a massive part of that. Another player, obviously, is a guy like Tim Keenan, and I continue to stick with the front, and the reason that I say that is, if the edge guys are doing their job and they're making Ashton Daniels' life uncomfortable, Ashton's not really the guy that really wants to step up in the pocket a ton because of that mobility, but a guy like Tim Keenan, his pocket collapsing ability, where, you're not allowing a whole lot of pockets for him to step up and deliver throws, the more you can do of that, the more I think that a guy like Ashton Daniels, as good as I think he did against Vanderbilt and certainly has the ability to make some plays against Alabama, I also think he's vulnerable to, maybe a turnover or two. And I think those two players will probably make a massive difference as far as putting him in some of those situations.
So Alabama has won 2 in a row at Jordan Hare, dating back to 2019. Do they make it 3 in a row? Does Auburn pull the upset and cost Alabama a shot at the playoffs and the SEC championship?
I ultimately think that, it's going to be a battle throughout. I think Alabama fans are going to be uncomfortable at the start of the fourth quarter. I think Alabama's going to hold a slight lead. And I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up having one of those drives that we've seen. I understand that a lot of it has come at the end of the first half, but that type of drive where they really need to, run a lot of clock, handle the football as far as holding on to it for 5 or 6 minutes, taking a lot of time off the clock, and then punching in a touchdown to go up maybe, like a 30-21 type of game. That's kind of what I have the score at right now. Now, granted, it could end up being closer than that, but anybody that would, in that type of situation, you'll walk away, and if you're Alabama, you're thrilled with a 9-point victory. You're thrilled with just winning the football game in general. But, I think a lot of people will reflect on that type of game, and they'd say, hey, it was a 9-point win for Alabama, but it was actually a lot closer than that. It was a battle for a majority of the game. So I think I like this Alabama team's ability to respond to adversity. I think that's a problem that they had in 2024 that has not been nearly as big of an issue in 2025. So I ultimately think they figure out a way to get it done, but it's certainly going to be a battle.
Now, I know I'm probably putting the cart before the horse, but in your opinion, who would be a better matchup for Alabama in the SEC championship game? Would it be your familiar foe of Georgia or one of the hottest teams in college football, Texas A&M?
Great question. From an X's and O's standpoint, I think that just I think Kalen DeBoer can really give Kirby Smart some trouble, and it's not just Kalen DeBoer, it's Ryan Grubb. It's really that duo. But at the same time, Texas A&M, I also think that there's some vulnerabilities. They are really good as far as their pass rush. I think offensively, Marcel Reed is doing some great things. They lost a running back, and they've just kept on trucking along. They got some great receivers in Mario Craver and Kevin Concepcion. They got some dudes, on both sides of the football. So that would be a really tough matchup. The reason, a lot of Alabama fans would probably tell you we'd rather play Texas A&M than Georgia. Here's the one reason why I would say maybe that shouldn't be the case. I've been thinking a lot about like the BYU, and if they end up beating Texas Tech, a lot of people say that, would Texas Tech drop from number 5 out of the top 12, or would BYU have to come in and really, when you've got the ACC champ and the G5 champ, if those end up being your 11 and 12s, that number 10 seed becomes very vulnerable if BYU also has to come in. So would Alabama fall out in that instance? And one of the arguments that I've made in favor of Texas Tech is to say, well, Texas Tech beat BYU. So even if BYU beats them, they can make the argument, hey, we played twice and we split. And I think that would help in that argument where you can't say, okay, BYU is definitively better than Texas Tech. There would be an argument to make for both. Now, I think that same principle could be applied to Alabama and Georgia. If Alabama ended up playing Georgia and then they lost to them, they can make the argument, yeah, but now we're split with them. We went into Athens and we handed Georgia a loss, snapped a huge winning streak for them. Yes, they tied it back up, but can you definitively say they're a better football team when, it's split 1-1? That could maybe, for an argument's sake, could actually help Alabama more than if they lost to Texas A&M. But if you're strictly looking to try to win the game, I think having to play any team twice is tough. So you'd probably go Texas A&M. But if you were to tell me, hey, Clint, it doesn't matter which team you play, Alabama's going to lose. In that instance, I would probably say I'd rather play Georgia.
Yeah. So, Clint, let me also ask you this. It was announced that the playoff bracket was going to be Alabama at Ole Miss, potentially in the playoffs. If it started today, that would be absolutely incredible.
That's what you dream of. I mean, just because from Alabama's standpoint, like last year, Tennessee had to go on the road and they had to play Ohio State up in Columbus. I mean, that's a tough environment. Yep. It's different. The weather's different. You know, if you're Alabama, having to just travel over to Oxford, you've played plenty of road games in Oxford, right? So, I mean, from that standpoint, I mean, that's as probably as good as you could possibly ask if you're Alabama. Now, granted, there are probably some matchups that you would want more. Right. Or some teams that you would want more, but just from a travel standpoint and not putting too much strain on your players, I think that would be incredible. And then just seeing the Chambliss, dynamic as far as how does Alabama try to contain him and contain some of these Ole Miss playmakers and Lacey at running back. Like, they got dudes across the board. Lane Kiffin, it's possible he could end up being gone at that point. So you might travel to Oxford and you don't even have to go against a team that has their offensive guru anymore. Offensive mastermind kind of being the architect of that offense. I mean, I think that would be beneficial for Alabama as well. So while I think it would be a great matchup and a lot to talk about, a lot of fun, I also think that would probably give Alabama an advantage. So that would certainly be something, if you're an Alabama fan, you should pull for if possible.
Right. All right. I'm going to put you on the spot, Clint. Lane Kiffin. In 2026, is he coaching at LSU or is he staying there in Oxford?
Oh, so we're cutting out Florida, huh? Yeah. Because there for a while, I mean, based off people I was talking to, I would have said Florida, even over LSU. Now, granted, that's kind of changed in probably the last week or so.
Right.
I still don't think for sure that even Lane Kiffin has made his mind up. But I think at this point, he's leaving Oxford. I really do. Because I just don't think – a lot of people are saying it's all for show. You're not going to create these unnecessary distractions for your football team. You can claim, hey, we're focused on football, and your players can come out and do these interviews and talk about it. It's not a distraction at all. Let them go lose a football game, and they'll change their tune really quickly, and they'll talk about how big of a distraction it was. I mean, there's just no way that it wouldn't be. And if you're Lane Kiffin and you finally got an opportunity to kind of finally get to the college football playoffs and then turn around and maybe, compete, you wouldn't do something like this just for the attention of it. I really don't think so. So with the second that the athletic director made that post talking about it, I knew Lane Kiffin was 100% gone. It's just a matter of figuring out exactly where he's going to go.
Clint, look, man, this has been a blast with you discussing the ins and outs of the Alabama Crimson Tide. Go and enjoy covering the Iron Bowl down in Auburn, Alabama. Happy Thanksgiving to you and yours, and we would love to catch up with you to figure out where Alabama is going to go next after Auburn.
That sounds great, man. I apologize for the technical difficulties early, but this has been a great conversation, and I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving, brother.
Thank you, man, and it was awesome. Great job, and I will leave you with this. Roll Tide. Good luck to Alabama on Saturday.
Thank you so much, Stephen. Good talking to you, brother. Appreciate you, man.
Thank you. All right, so guys, that is going to wrap up all of the preview shows for this week. Really do want to thank all of the guests for joining us, and that, of course, is going to be the final show for the Stingray Show this week, as tomorrow is Thanksgiving, and then we've got football that begins on Black Friday. That is this Friday with Mississippi State Ole Miss, Georgia, and Georgia Tech, and then the Lone Star Showdown between the Giga Maggies and the Longhorns of Texas. So 3 SEC games on Friday, and then the rest of them will be on Saturday. And guys, I hope that everyone listening and watching here has a wonderful Thanksgiving out there tomorrow. I am so thankful for all of my followers, all of my friends that are watching this right now, and of course, my family. So thank you all for being supporters of the Stingray Show. Go and have a happy and blessed Thanksgiving. Be safe in your travels, traveling to wherever you are going. And guys, we will catch you bright and early on Monday morning with a recap of everything from rivalry weekend as we look ahead next week to Championship Saturday, because the conference championship games are a week from tomorrow. So guys, go and enjoy Thanksgiving, and we will catch you on the other side of Thanksgiving on Monday, right back here on the Stingray Show. You guys are awesome. I thank y'all every day for being here and watching the Stingray Show, and we are out. For over 100 years, the Bank of Moundville has been a name clients can trust. The Bank of Moundville is more than just a bank. They're your neighbors, your friends, and your community partners. Their unique approach to financial education has always centered around families. They believe that financially strong homes today lay the foundation for a brighter futures for tomorrow's generation. You can call them today at 205-371-2227. Once again, that is 371-2227 to schedule an appointment to build your financial security. The Bank of Moundville is a member FDIC and an equal housing lender. There's nothing like rivalry week in college football. Our friends at J&J Apparel have released two awesome designs for two of the best rivalry matchups in the South. The Egg Bowl 2025 shirt features a hand-drawn design of the Golden Egg Trophy, available in colors for both Rebels and Bulldog fans. And of course, there's the Iron Bowl 2025 design for our Alabama and Auburn fans. Both shirts are available for a limited time only, so run on over to J&J Apparel's site and get it while you still can. The pre-sale ends December the 1st. Don't miss out. Shop at jnjapparel.net. Once again, that is jnjapparel.net for the Egg Bowl 2025 shirt and the Iron Bowl 2025 shirt, available through J&J Apparel. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Ferguson of South's Finest Meats, the official sponsor of the Stingray Show, has a message for you.
Everything we do here is fresh and custom made, custom to order. You know, I tell people when they come in, you know, if you don't see what you like, ask somebody. You know, we've got the capability to process it, make it. You know, if you want a different blend of hamburger meat, we'll do your brisket blend. We'll do your chuck blend. We'll do your sirloin blend. You know, we do all that right here. We are a butcher shop. That's what we do. So please don't be afraid to ask if you don't see what you like. We can make you any size patty you want. We can make you any amount you want. You know, people call me and say, well, how many patties come in the box? Well, ma'am, how many would you like in a box? You know, you want 12, we'll put 12. You want 25, we'll put 25.
That's just one of the many things that South's Finest Meats has to offer, the official butcher shop of the Stingray Show. Alright guys, and as a reminder, right here, Friday, Mississippi State and Ole Miss, that is the Egg Bowl rivalry, 11 a.m. on ABC. Then, following that on ABC, you've got clean old-fashioned hate between Georgia and Georgia Tech, 2:30 on ABC. And finally, on Friday at 6:30 on ABC, you've got Texas and Texas A&M in the Lone Star Showdown. And then everybody else is on Saturday. 3 SEC games on Friday to start off the SEC rivalry weekend. We hope that you guys have a wonderful and blessed Thanksgiving, and we will see you again on the Stingray Show Monday morning at 8:30 with a recap of everything that happened this weekend right here in college football.